Hi guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits Rapp podcast. What's happening this week, Mike?
Hey, not much. I enjoyed talking with Eric Bishop last week. I only wish you could have joined us because we had a good time.
Yeah, I finally got a chance to listen to your interview. Very good job. You did a very good job, and he seemed like a very nice guy. I'm really excited for him. When you guys listen to this episode, his book will have been out for a couple days now. Yeah, and I actually started it alongside reading it. Actually, reading this one because I don't have the audiobook. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. So I'm excited to be able to talk to you about it in a couple weeks. We can do a little after we talk about Order to Kill. We can go revisit that and do some spoiler stuff. That way, people have time to listen to it, and maybe we can have some fan engagement.
Right, and forgot to mention at the end of the interview that Eric was kind enough to let us raffle off or do a giveaway for Mitch Rapp Pod listeners for a copy of The Body Man. So if you haven't seen our post on social media, check out Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're going to give another week or two for you to retweet the post and tag a mate, tag a friend who you think would enjoy a new debut author's thriller. And you might have a chance to get your own copy of The Body Man, in addition to the one you already own, or one for a friend to give away.
There you go.
Yeah. Now, we got to get to Order to Kill. Did you say Chris Furman, the audiobook guru, actually read this one on the printed page?
Order to Kill?
Yeah.
No, I'm reading. Well, actually, I got this Kindle Paperwhite for last Christmas.
Okay.
And everything's just been so crazy with my life, graduating, moving again,
Raising 3 kids.
Raising 3 kids. I haven't had a chance to actually physically read a book. Like, one of the nice things about pushing back Enemy at the Gates was that I was able to wait for the audiobook. Because I had read, I don't know, like 15 or 20 or so chapters. And then, because we pushed it back, we decided to do whatever. I actually got to read it, and I like reading new audiobooks, like hearing George Godel. But yeah, no, I'm reading this one, and then I'm also listening to it because I have the Scribed app. Highly recommend the Scribed app. Anyone out there? This is no ads, but no free ads. But I do like the Scribed app. No, but I'm reading The Body Man. That's what I was saying.
Gotcha. You're reading The Body Man on the Kindle version. Gotcha.
Yeah, appreciating my Kindle Paperwhite.
All right, so you gotta update the podcast anytime you pick up a physical book next, because we gotta know.
Like a non-ebook,
not Kindle,
or
not an ebook, not an audiobook unscribed. We gotta know when Chris is next in the print. Smell the pages, feel that crisp texture. What book you got in your hands next?
No, it would have had to been the Ark for Enemy at the Gates.
Enemy,
that
was the last time
I all right.
How about this? I challenge you to read one book in print before the next arc of the next Mitch Rapp book.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh, yo!
I got a bunch of books last year for Christmas that I got that I've. Well, no, I haven't read that. Like, I got what did I get? Anyways, my dad just went to this. He was up in Maryland somewhere. We're going way off the rails. He was up in Maryland somewhere, and they were having a closeout. So they had all these really nice hardcovers, because I like to collect hardcovers for like $1, $2, $3.
Right.
He got me like 3 of the Jack Carr books in hardcover. He got me A Lethal Agent, which I only had the Arc of Lethal Agent. It never came. I ordered it on Amazon, and it never came. And like, things were crazy. I just didn't follow up on it. And then, no, I guess that was Total Power. Anyways, but yeah. So,
I don't know where this place is, because usually you find those like dollar hardcovers there. They're like some of the classics or the old ones. You don't get the newer books like a Jack Carr or Kyle Mills.
This was Ollie's. It's not even a bookstore. It's Ollie's. Like, just a random.
They have everything. You're right.
They have everything, but they were going out of business. So like, they had all their books, and so they had newer books.
Gotcha. Yeah, Ollie's has everything.
Yeah. Anyways. Oh, I should mention, I am currently reading a physical book to my son. We got the illustrated versions of the Harry Potter, and so we are reading a chapter a night.
You did say that.
That is a physical book.
All right, that counts. That counts. I'll give it to you. There it is. I like that too. It's a nice tradition to set up.
Yeah.
I like that. When do you get to Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings? I hope that's next after Harry Potter.
Oh, well, they need to make a. Well, it might be coming now that Amazon is going to making the Lord of the Rings verse, but
Right,
they needed to
right.
make a illustrated version because that's what really engages Patrick. Is like, there'll be like 2 pages of just text, and then we get to this next page, and it's like this full grand scape of like, Hagrid and the Dursleys, and
Love that.
then Diagon Alley, and then we get to then we get to Hogwarts. It's really cool.
I love that. Love that. Nice. That's awesome. All right. Well, I hinted at it. We are getting to Order to Kill. And in some ways, you might say it's Kyle's first complete Mitch Rapp novel because The Survivor, there were 3 pages written by Vince Flynn still to kick off that book. This is Kyle's first entirely creative piece where he didn't necessarily have to build out storylines that were already given to him, because The Survivor was heavily based on the events of The Last Man. This is Kyle's own storytelling at its finest. And so I'm looking forward to getting into it. And I know, Chris, you always have the scores on Goodreads and the summary for us. Did you come through today?
I did.
Okay.
So this one has pretty highly reviewed, a little bit higher than The Survivor. It has a 4.33 on Goodreads, which is one of the highest. 4.6 on Amazon out of almost 4,500 reviews. And yeah, I think, like you said, it's Kyle's first real book. He didn't have, I guess this was his first opportunity. And I guess he had to come up with his own story in The Survivor, but he had to rely heavily on, because it was a 2-part book essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now we're getting into his Russian trilogy, the part 1 of this Russian trilogy, which, I don't know, this book is just really good. I'm just going to say it. I really enjoy revisiting these books.
Oh, yeah. I still have that hot take I got to share, so.
Yeah, you left me hanging off of our last recording, and I'm interested to hear that. So,
All right. It'll come.
all right. So Goodreads says, in the next thrilling novel of the New York Times #1 best-selling Mitch Rapp series, the anti-terrorism operative heads to Pakistan to confront a mortal threat he may not be prepared for. In fact, this time he might have met his match, and Mitch Rapp is used to winning. But in the follow-up to the previous book, The Survivor, the CIA operative finds himself chasing false leads from continent to continent in an effort to keep the Pakistani nukes from falling into the hands of terrorists. Together with friend and colleague Scott Coleman, Rapp struggles to prevent the loss of these lethal weapons, particularly because Russia is so intent on using the nukes, and not for the same reason as Rapp and Coleman. Soon it becomes alarmingly clear that forces in Moscow are bent on fomenting even more chaos and turmoil in the Middle East, and Rapp must go deep into Russian territory to figure this out. I mean, this pretty much gives away the entire book, but
Right.
This is a very compelling story, and I'm just going to come out the gate, and they even mentioned it here, the theme of this first part is Mitch Rapp outmatched.
Right.
Is he behind the 8 ball? I guess we've seen him be a little bit behind the 8 ball before. This is like a current, I guess, a theme that Kyle likes to do. I guess the last time we saw him behind the 8 ball was when the attack actually happened in
Total Power.
Total Power. He's a little bit outmatched in Lethal Agent. Like this virus is getting out, and he has to like track it down.
But here we're getting outmatched, not in this like global, structure of events. He's being outmatched by an individual with the talent. It's almost as if Louis Gould and he talked the talk, but he was maybe just not as good as Rapp in walking the walk. Grisha Azarov comes off the page as a force, as someone who I think could best Louis Gould, and someone who definitely were being set up, who does outmuscle Scott Coleman, outthink Scott Coleman. And the question is, if Rapp were in Scott's shoes, would Rapp have been on the receiving end of Grisha's, beating and almost died or died? Like, would he have been beat if Rapp were in Scott Coleman's shoes? Which is a scene I'm just dying to get to, but I guess we'll have to save that a little.
Right. So I just wanted to come out from the gun and say, like, so essentially what Kyle is doing here is revisiting Consent to Kill almost, because you have I saw a lot of similarities. You know, you have Claudia
Mm-hmm.
coming back. You see this like burgeoning, budding relationship between Rapp and herself. You have like the bringing up of the house, which was
Right.
was one of the main focal points of Consent to Kill, because you know Anna was starting to work on that. We're finally tying that back together, and then we bring in this character that's supposed to mimic Louis Gould, but be better than him
Yeah.
and be the complete version of him. Because like where Louis was skilled, he lacked in mind, whereas Grisha understands Rapp, understands that Rapp is not someone to be messed with. I guess Louis also mentioned that, but Louis was stupid enough to take it on.
Yeah. The hubris.
Grisha here is being forced to do it
Mm-hmm.
because he ultimately is a puppet of Krupin. Like I really want to talk to you about Krupin and his character. One thing I was wondering, why did Grisha not fight back and say, because he obviously realized that this was a flawed plan and he would rather have more time to do this? Like, why didn't he push back on trying to come up with a better plan, knowing that Mitch was such a skilled operator?
Okay. I was thinking about this, and I think it has to do with Grisha's the opening scene where we first meet him. And to be honest, Grisha has an arc of his own. And again, Kyle,
Right.
you know, we love the Kyleisms. He does like, I don't want to say the sympathetic villains, but the villains that have another side to them that are not just your black and white pure evil. And so here's my take on that question. When we meet Grisha, he's in some like some ghost town in central Russia that's kind of been through its boom and now it's a bust. Like the factories are closing down. It was a working class town, and he's going to meet with one of these oligarchs who is still the only billionaire in the region, basically still pulling the strings in that part of Russia. And Grisha is questioning himself, what am I doing here working for Krupin? I know Krupin likes to keep distinct and isolated the various parts of his schemes, and he's starting to realize maybe I'm just a pawn being kind of used by him. And Grisha actually allows himself to not be convinced, but to at least listen to this Dmitry Utkin, who's trying to tell him, like, you're a pawn, Krupin's using you. You could see Russia going down the tubes. Your guy, the president, is not the right guy to get Russia out of this. You can go around the country doing his dirty work, keeping him in power, you know, basically scaring the crap out of all us aristocracy who, over history, deserved equal power to the president. Like we should be included. We're the the backbone of this country economically, financially, socially, by the things and the services they provide to the Russian citizens. And these group of oligarchs could very easily get the Russian people to turn against Krupin. And one of them, the strongest among them, the most cunning, could undercut Krupin and take over the presidency, right? Could completely have a coup in Russia. Grisha's starting to wonder, which side of this do I want to be on? So I think he's kind of got an arc himself. And so I don't know if he's necessarily thinking clearly on this mission. I think he's realizing he might just be a foot soldier and questioning things himself. And part of that is he doesn't recognize Scott Coleman's movements later in the warehouse, and he's caught off guard seeing it's not Rapp. So I think it's all part of this arc of Grisha questioning, does he really want to work for this president? Does he really want to prop up this regime? Is he going to keep doing these missions? And now he's been physically injured, you know, doing it. He almost got beat. I think it's just going to be part of Grisha's arc that these haphazard missions where he's not even in the picture, he only has a slice of it. I think this is going to be a wake-up call for him. That he should be involved more in the plan. That he should have more of an active role. He shouldn't just be this foot soldier for a weak president who half the country and the oligarchs are turning against.
Right. And I think, I guess, like, sort of piggybacking what you said at the very beginning, I think what Kyle is trying to set out to do is to show that Grisha is not ultimately going to be the villain. Like, he may be a villainous character in this novel, but there is going to be a redemption. I think he's like priming us for the ultimate redemption arc. Spoiler alert! Like there's going to be like a redemption arc, and eventually him and Rapp are going to be friends and or I don't know, I want to call them friends, but go on missions together, right? So
Right.
Rapp is going to have some sense of trust for this guy, and I think Kyle is setting us up from the very beginning, not to hate him like we hated what was the professor, right?
Right.
Who was a pawn of Hank Clark, or not to hate Louis Gold.
Grisha
There
is
is
questioning. He doesn't trust Krupin. He's questioning him from the very get-go.
right, but ultimately he does do Krupin's dirty work because
Sure.
that's what he's been trained to do.
Right. He does. And there's multiple times where it says how Krupin kind of handpicked him from the special forces, gave him this lavish lifestyle, whatever he wanted, really made him his poster child. And so I think Grisha's starting to question basically his youth, his 20s or whatever, when he was in the special forces and he got picked. He got groomed essentially by these men. And I think he's starting to realize that grooming process, they're trying to make him just a cold-blooded killer and just a brainwash, do whatever you need for the Russian president at their will. And we see Grisha wanting to think for himself, which I think makes him a character we're sympathetic towards and that we could be okay with if he uses his skill set to question Russian authority, to question the morals and the calls being made. And those seeds are there right away. So we could see Grisha as someone we maybe don't root for all the time, but if out of necessity we have to have on our team, we'd be okay with it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is a guy who, just the regimen that he was explaining, like how he's gotten to be who he is, has brought in all these, martial arts trainers, ballistic trainers, like world-renowned people to teach him, to hone his skills. He even has this like banned German sports doctor who has him on like some cocktail. It reminds me of like that. Have you seen the Bourne Legacy? It's like the one Bourne movie without Matt Damon. It has Jeremy Renner.
I don't think so.
And in that one, it shows like the new Treadstone. Well, it's not called Treadstone, but whatever the Treadstone, the newest one is. They have these super soldiers essentially where they're fed these two drugs. One like is supposed to help with your mind, and one's supposed to help with your body. By doing, they explain it in the movie, anyways. Scientifically doesn't work out. I can just say
Grisha's pumped up on all that though, and there's even a line at one point where he's just like, "I have to take this just because I take it, and that's what they tell me to do, and I know it makes me the best in the business and the fastest." Oh, and he's running that obstacle course also.
Right.
That doctor is like, everything is so scientific. And the doctor's like, if I give you this cocktail, this drug, and I lace it with some of this, you should shave off half a second from the obstacle course. Why did you not shave off half a second? You only shaved off 0.2 of a second. And it just shows, like, it made me think of like the Russian hockey team and, the Miracle on Ice. Like, is that the type of advantage that ultimately wins long term? Does it build the character that's going to make the right call in the field all the time? Or does it just create this artificial super soldier? And I think Grisha at one point takes the drugs and he's just like, I don't know another life or another way. I just do it mindlessly because I'm programmed to. But we see a glimpse of Grisha starting to say like, I know it's going to shave off years of my life. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about performance. But now he's getting older. He's kind of starting to question things just a little, I feel.
Right. So I guess related to all this is the Krupin character, the president of Russia. Like I wanted to ask you, what do you think of him? Obviously, he's sort of based off of the current Russian president. Not, Kyle's not hiding anything there. I don't know. He's a very interesting character to me, and we spend more time with him, I feel like, in the very beginning than we do some of our other villains that we have in previous books. We're let in on this whole plot fairly early on. So there's no suspense in terms of like what the actual, I guess we don't know the whole plot, but we know that there's going to be something involved with nukes and taking out these Saudi Arabian oil fields, and he plans to drive the price of oil up, to $3 or what is it? $300 a barrel, and
Yeah.
then people will start relying on Russia and stuff like that. I don't know. It's the plot mechanism is interesting, especially finding out so early on.
I think though the magic here is in how that's revealed. I think it's less who Crouppen is and what he's doing, and more how Kyle is telling us that story. Because, like, even his plan to destroy the oil fields, it's not like, oh, Kyle just writes a chapter and the Russian president is just explaining his thinking for no reason.
Right.
He's in a meeting with all the people who could challenge his authority, and there's one old timer who's pushing back, the one who does have the balls, but also the rap sheet to say something in front of this group to the president. And he opens his mouth, and Croupen's like kind of taken aback. But then a young person, another one of these young oligarchs who really doesn't have the background to be able to speak up to the president, and in normal times, when the president does not seem weak, would never open his mouth, he starts mouthing off, and he starts pulling apart Crouppen. And Crouppen sees this almost a rebellion on his hands by this crew.
Right.
And he says, now I'm going to play my trump card, which is, here's what we're doing in Pakistan. We're going to try to get nukes and fissile material from the Pakistani, shit show that's going on over there, which was related to the recent events where Rapp killed Ahmed Taj. And so there's a power vacuum in Pakistan. Croupen's plan is to expose that, take advantage from it, get this fissile material that cannot be tied back to Russia, and use it to destroy Saudi oil fields. So I don't really care that much about Crouppen yet, if I'm being honest. But I love the storytelling of how Vince is unveiling that, because the Russian power dynamics. Oh, and then the architecture.
Kyle, yeah.
Kyle, yeah. You know how you picked up in Enemy at the Gates the way the cooks are changing the White House and the architecture and the decor is so telling? Kyle gives a lot of detail on Croupen's, I guess we're in the Kremlin or wherever he is.
Yeah.
The building and the decor in his
the various
office.
Meeting places, yeah.
Right. And one of them is he wanted to bring in the desk of like the czars. So I think it was Nicholas II. And so he's trying to establish this whole like, I'm the next in a long line of Russian rulers going back centuries who can dominate this part of the world and are a global superpower. And Grisha's like, but does he get the irony that Nicholas II was deposed in the revolution by the common people? And so he's almost like he's going too fast for himself. He wants to bring back the grandness of the Tsar, but he's making some missteps, and Grisha's kind of picking up on those. There's a lot of interesting storytelling dynamics in those details.
Yeah, and I like how Kyle brings in those details to flesh out the character, build the character more. Because you could have just brought in this, call him Dmitri, some Russian person who wants to, hurt the United States. But what makes it more interesting is building this character. And while I say while you say you might not care about him yet, I think when it comes to when we see his ultimate downfall in 3 books from now, you will have appreciated that character and that building of who he is better, Yeah,
the world building, yeah. Speaking of, though, so Dmitri Utkin is the guy Grisha's meeting with in the prelude or in the prologue.
Yes. Who he kills, yeah.
And he kills him. Am I wrong that Utkin is also the guy in Red War who unseats Crouppen? Isn't that Utkin also? I was like, when Utkin died, I was like, wait, shit, Utkin comes back later.
Maybe it's another closely sounding Russian name. I forget.
I'm pretty sure it was... Okay, in this book, it was Dmitri Utkin. Red War. Dude, Red War is Boris Utkin.
Boris Utkin. Oh, maybe he's related. We'll have to get to that. But yeah, no, there's a lot of connective tissue between those 2 books. So,
because when we saw Utkin, I was in my mind, I'm like, wait, that's Crouppen. He's going to be president for a while. And I'm like, wait, he killed Utkin? I thought the Russian president was around for multiple books. I had them mixed up because the name Utkin also comes back in Red War. Yeah. Right, we're going to have to track this because, like I said, I think these 2 or 3 books, Order to Kill, Enemy of the State, and Red War, are Kyle's books I probably have most forgotten the storylines of. And I didn't even finish this reread of Order to Kill. I only did the first half for this podcast, so I'm kind of in the dark, if you will, forgetting the details of the storylines at the end of this book, in Enemy at the State, and how that leads up to Red War. So it's gonna be like a new wave of doing this. I don't think there are books that I completely have forgotten this much since maybe Act of Treason.
It's like reading the book all over again.
Yeah, it's actually kind of nice. Like in this one, I knew Grisha comes around.
Right.
I
You know,
knew
like
he does.
the
I'm pretty sure I remember him hurting Scott Coleman. I remember Coleman's out of the game for a while, but I don't remember the details of it. So, dude, can we get to the action stuff? Because
yeah, let's do it.
I want to share with you my hot take. So before we get to that scene, we have to talk about how Rapp is brought into this story.
Right.
Because we open up with Grisha and all that, but then we see Rapp is going to protect Claudia in South Africa. And in my mind, I'm kind of thinking like, we saw them together. He already visited her in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I get that he's playing this role of protection, but I know there's also a relationship, being built here. So I'm like, what's he doing on the ground? Well, turns out he has intel that there's a hit on her. Someone tipped off the CIA that they're going after her. He pulls out of Pakistan, leaves Scott Coleman in charge of tracking the nukes, which the power vacuum in Pakistan has created a whole mess of. The general there, in charge of the army, wants to control the nukes to get it away from the politician, the prime minister, who is kind of like pro-America. He's one of our allies. That's why Rapp didn't kill him and took out his adversary, Ahmed Taj, with a fork in the... No, the fork was the senator. He killed him with the poison.
With the poison, yeah.
The poison in The Survivor. So anyway, all these nukes are going on Pakistan. Why would Rapp leave? Well, he hears Claudia's in danger. And so the Russians who are pulling the strings, they're pretty spot on knowing that Rapp has something going on for Claudia and would run to her aid.
Well, yeah, they know something, that the CIA has invested a lot of money in protecting this lady.
Right.
And setting her up with a new identity, house, and I think, was it the Russian who was on site is like, something's up with this, she has she pissed off somebody,
Yeah, who is she?
Who is she? She has a trust fund, but she really hasn't done anything else. She doesn't work, she doesn't have a steady job. What do you think of the whole heel turn in terms of, we get the one chapter where it looks like Rapp is caught,
right?
Whereas we were just the chapter before Rapp got the jump on the guy.
Yeah.
And then Rapp gets brought in, and then it comes to find out that this what is his name? Kent Black.
Kent Black is his cover. Yeah.
It was Steve Thompson.
Steve Thompson is his real name.
This is what does he call him? He calls him a sociopath.
Right.
Almost like a Louis Gould-esque character.
Kind of nuts.
But yeah, this guy was like, I'm not fucking with Mitch Rapp, and I know that this is Louis Gould's wife. I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. I'm gonna get myself a favor and tell Mitch Rapp.
He calls Rapp, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
He phones it in. All right, I was thrown off, and I think again though it worked out. Like Kyle got me. Like he totally.
Oh yeah, if you
over
didn't know
me.
that was coming, yeah.
Because Rapp is climbing this mountain, and he's like, "This would be the best vantage point for a sniper." And it seems like he's just taking a stroll. And then he's like, oh, yeah, there he is. And he sees a sniper lying on the ground. I'm like, dude, like alarm bells should be going off. You just randomly, on a hike through the mountains, stumbled on a sniper and his position. Like, what is going on? And then you try to take him, and he apparently turns on you. He detonates a device that was watching his six while he was laying in in prone position. I'm like, so now this guy's got Rapp, and he's handcuffed him. I'm like, what? This is just so strange. And then Kyle gives us this dude, Steve Thompson, hired by the Russians because he's kind of a loon. He was a special forces. I want to say Delta guy maybe, but he basically would take the highest bidder. He was Ranger? Okay. He'd go to the highest bidder because he was raised on some farm in the middle of nowhere, Montana. His dad was a crazy...
Killed his dad?
Yeah, his dad was like a conspiracy freak, and so he taught him all this survival stuff in the woods. But then his dad went off the deep end and started beating him, and so like he used like his final mission that his dad was training him for was to kill him and leave him in the woods or something. Like
it's kind of like the plot from 10 Cloverfield Lane. Have you ever seen that
no.
movie?
I saw the first
anyways.
Cloverfield.
Yeah. The sequel, which is not supposed to be related, but it is related. Anyway. Yeah, this character is very quirky, weird.
That's a Kyleism.
Yes, very much so. We get another quirky character that we can talk about later on, but the Craig character,
Craig guy,
the nuclear, he has 3 PhDs, but he's tatted up. He was
like
hired by the
mechanic
CIA.
in the world.
Hired by the CIA, quit because he doesn't like authority essentially, and now he's like the most highly paid and the smartest mechanic on the planet. So.
And he soups up all the CIA's cars. Yeah, so we got two kind of quirky characters, which Kyle told us he thinks that's his thing. He's got it here. But so I'm wondering, this Steve Thompson sniper dude, what's going on? He actually called up Rapp and said, like, yo, if this job I took with the Russians involves Mitch Rapp, I'm not getting on the bad side of this. And that actually works because he takes in Rapp in the trunk of a car as if he captured him. When he turns him over to the Russians, he and Rapp turn the tables, interrogate the Russian, and find out. And this Russian, when Rapp is giving him the business, says, Grisha's going to get you anyway. And now Rapp's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because Rapp wants to know who's after Claudia. This Russian dude eventually gives it away and says, you're going to find out soon enough when you meet Grisha. And so Rapp now has a mission to protect Claudia. He's got to kill Grisha.
Yeah, so this was going to be my next point to bring up. Do we really believe that Rapp has never heard of Grisha? I mean, like they sort of address it with a conversation between Irene and him, and the fact that he's been doing Krupin's dirty work. Obviously, they're going to have maybe they don't know it's Grisha, but they have like some sort of, like code name for who this guy is. We don't know who this guy is, but like the vampires out there, like, I don't know, that's a bad name, but like,
and
Baba Yaga.
Grisha isn't his real name.
No, I know that. Yeah,
there was a little drop of what his actual family name was. So, I can't conceive of a reason the CIA would not have intel on this guy if he's that high up the ranks. And we know we've had Russian moles. We had Sitting Bull, right? Like, Krupin does like to compartmentalize things, so no one but himself knows all the different operations. So maybe none of our moles or our intel was able to crack that part. But I feel like if a guy's that good, Irene's gonna have the drop on him. That's the one
especially
thing
if, like,
I didn't buy.
He, he's obviously has no hesitation taking on these oligarchs. I don't even think it's mentioned that like he did it with the previous one and then just chopped up his money and gave it to the other ones. So they're gonna have tabs on this. They're gonna, I agree that maybe they don't know who he is or have a description of of anything, but they would have something that, like, all right, we give him a code name, and all right, and then Rapp can be like, oh, maybe this guy is this guy. I don't know. That's one thing I had trouble buying.
Yeah, I don't buy how Kennedy and Rapp are in the dark. It's like, he definitely has an athletic build. So let's look at athletes that were growing up around this time period in Russia. And Kennedy's like, okay, so I'm looking for a white dude who is an athlete in Russia. Like, okay, I don't have much to go off of here, Mitch, but how do they not already have a profile of this guy? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. So all of this, though. Oh, I guess Claudia being taken. So Rapp working with Steve Thompson are going to basically try to figure out who's behind this, but it's not before they do get to Claudia. And so here's a question. The tractor trailer, Claudia's driving down a street. They have this ramp come out the back of a truck, and then a car behind Claudia's SUV has this like forklift kind of claw that guides her SUV with nowhere else to go except up the ramp into the back of this truck. Anna's freaking out. Claudia's trying to tell her to be okay. And these ISIS guys are in the truck. Like, that's where I lost it a little bit. I'm like, is ISIS really at the point where someone like the Russians is contracting ISIS dudes to go to South Africa and do their missions? Like, doesn't Russia have their own people to be able to pull something like that? Even if you don't want them to be Russian, right? So you don't leave a trail.
That was
don't
all
they
part
at
of
least
the plan.
Have other mercenaries that are not ISIS Like, that didn't make sense.
I think
to
they
me.
want to tie in this idea of ISIS is on the rise, and that was supposed to be part of Krupin's plan. Of ISIS is now kidnapping people. You know, because he's going to blame all of this what's going on in Pakistan on ISIS and like sort of drum up
Okay.
fear with the Americans. You know.
Okay.
Yeah, but that whole scene reminded me of just like some sort of scene from the Fast and the Furious. Like it was
Yeah.
not something normally that we see in a Mitrap novel.
Yeah, it was very different. Very, very different. Yeah. Rapp Freezer, though, eventually gets the drop, knows there's this guy, Grisha, and then they got to go look for him. Now, what brings his team, what intel do they get to actually fly to Faisalabad? Because this is where I wanted to get to. Rapp and Scott, Irene, and Maslik. Maslik's in on the gig. Irene puts them all in Faisalabad. Oh, this is part of Krupin's plan as well.
Yeah, there's just they know that these nukes are being moved around,
Right.
and
It's a trap.
When Mitch leaves,
It's a trap.
It's a trap. When Mitch leaves, Scott, who stays there, gets intel that these things are going to be moving, which was probably leaked, by Krupin, and then Grisha's there waiting for him.
Grisha's waiting.
And
Yeah.
then, like this was the plan, and he like just finds out that this was the plan all along. He because again, this whole compartmentalization, it leads to a little bit of confusion, like understanding who knows what, who's where. We're doing a lot of jumping around
True.
very early on in this book, but I will have to say the freaking action in these next series of chapters, where they find out that all right, the vegetable truck or whatever, like fruit truck is there. And then, so they go out on these motorcycles, and then Rapp conveniently gets like pushed aside and has to go on foot. So this is the thing that sends Scott in there instead of him. And then Scott getting overrun. Mitch coming up and seeing all of it from afar. Like
Getting dropped on the roof.
I wanted to getting picked up and then dropped on the roof. I wanted to visualize this, or I wanted to see this on camera. Like this whole action scene would have been great, a great scene, great sequence to show and film and look at in a movie.
100%. So here's my hot take.
Okay.
From the moment Scott and Mitch get on those motorcycles and they're weaving through the streets of Pakistan, following the truck, to where Scott is the lone man entering the warehouse because Rapp's motorbike got taken out going down some stairs, running from cops. He's approaching on foot. Maslik comes in a helicopter, drops a rope to Mitch, puts him up on a good vantage point, looking through the skylights from the roof of a nearby building, down on Scott operating in the warehouse, giving him cover. See Scott get shot in the head. And by the way, the only reason Scott's alive at this point is because he's wearing the helmet. He had to wear the motorbike helmet to hide his blonde hair. Rapp was getting mad at him, being like, yo, you can't be operating here with blonde hair. And dude, Kyle in the humor, he keeps bringing up how the blonde hair is going to screw them over. So he's got to hide it. And then he even says he offered to pay Scott Coleman in his contract by giving him a tanning bed and some hair dye instead of paying him for the contract. Like,
that was funny.
But that's what saves him, because the helmet.
That is what saves him.
The bullet grazed it, whatever. So Scott's trapped down in this warehouse. What happens next? Here's my hot take. And Chris, I want you to convince me I'm wrong here. I think this is the second best action sequence in all Mitch Rapp, including Vince Flynn, including the Vince Flynn books. Outside of Extreme Measures and the CTC, Takedown with Nash, convince me that this isn't the second best action sequence where Scott is getting his ass handed to him by Grisha.
It's, you know what, that's, you're probably right, because again, you know how you said when you read these books, but you sort of remember things. This is the one thing I remembered from this book, like that stood out, and I vividly recalled the scene of Scott and his fight with Grisha. and also the end scene, I remembered as well, which we'll get. It's just another great action sequence, which you haven't gotten there yet, but the action in this book, you might be right. I'm trying hard to think of like, I keep thinking of like the Mitch getting like dropped in, rapping consent to kill.
That house scene where he takes out like 13 guys, but I don't think it was as exciting as this. It was cool to watch Rapp shoot up these dudes, like run around this house, sniping them off with a Glock.
Memorial Day, like tracking down the nuke.
My other one I would say is a top contender is Memorial Day, the helicopter and the boats, and then bringing it to the mountain. So I maybe that's second and this is third, but yeah, the Memorial Day, the helicopter, the nuke at the end might be the only other thing. I was literally drooling over this scene. And then, so Scott's pinned down. He took one shot in the calf, one shot off the helmet in the head. He's bleeding, and I love how it says the sweat is being mixed in with his blood. He knows he can't walk because of his calf. And then, like, everything goes silent, and these ISIS dudes or these local fighters they have stop shooting. And Scott's calculating, like, I don't think with all this din, anybody could be loud enough to give an order. So there must be somebody in charge here who they're all freaking piss scared of, because there's no like general shouting, ceasefire, ceasefire, and everyone stops that briskly. Like there's an alpha male here. Like there's an alpha dog. And as soon as he says that, out of this silence, he expects to see just some dark Middle Eastern dude, with an AK-47 running through the warehouse. But slowly walking is a dude in a suit, like a crisp suit with these nice shoes, and he's just walking up to Scott, firing at him as Scott's cowering in this office behind a wall. Like, watching Grisha, and then he starts running, and Scott's like, one, I didn't expect a guy in a suit. Two, he just started running, and Rapp's the fastest person I've ever seen run. And this guy's considerably faster. And Scott even's like, if I was just fighting an average Joe, I'd be firing warning shots at him, even if I know I can't move and I can't get to cover because I can't walk. I just fire warning shots just to scare him or slow him down. He's like, I'd actually rather conserve ammo here because there's no point. This guy's not going to be scared of my warning shots. And Grisha's just coming for him. And Rapp, meanwhile, is on a rooftop looking down through a sunroof, doesn't have all the angles. And there's no radio contact because the headshot messed up Scott's radio. Rapp doesn't know if he makes a move. He doesn't see this other guy yet. And then, holy shit, listen to this. Rapp's thinking, here's a quote finally. I actually have a quote. Rapp's mentor, Stan Hurley, stressed creativity and improvisation over learned knowledge. One of his many mantras fit the situation perfectly. If everyone else is thinking right and left, you better fucking well be thinking up and down. And Rapp's like three-dimensional, up and down, left, right. I don't see anybody. He looks up and there's Grisha climbing a crane. And Grisha's hiding behind like the mast or the track of this crane. And he's crawling into the ceiling. But Rapp can't get a drop on him because he knows how to conceal himself. He just sees like his foot or his sleeve. And he's like, wait, he's going to the ceiling above Scott's position. And I know Scott can't move. Then all of a sudden, Rapp's waiting to take the shot as he drops through the ceiling. And Rapp gets caught off guard because the dude swings on an angle through the ceiling. Rapp's waiting for him to drop vertically, and instead he comes in on an angle, making it hard for a sniper to shoot him. And Rapp can't get the shot off. He's like, my chance of hitting him was close to zero. And Rapp's stuck on this rooftop. He has no idea how to get down there and help Scott. And then he sees Grisha pulling this knife, but he can't get an angle on him because he's hiding behind some like countertop. Oh my God, dude. It's awesome.
I had to I remember vividly because I read this one with an actual tangible book the first time, and I had to go back and reread these couple of chapters in order to appreciate them better, because like it's flying very fast. And then on listening to it the past couple of days, I would just go back and re-listen to it because the description of understanding where Grisha's going and what Rapp is seeing, and I knew you were going to pick that quote, by the way. As I was listening to it, I was like,
the three-dimensional thinking.
Martini's going to pick this quote. No,
Stan Hurley,
you're
baby.
right. This is if this is up there with one of the best action sequences in the entire series.
Oh my God. And we already know, I think Coleman's been shot 4 times. So it was the headshot, it was the calf. When Grisha closes in on him, or no, as
Gets him in
Grisha's
his
dropping
collarbone.
through the ceiling, he's spraying shots, hits him in the collarbones. He takes another 1 or 2, I think, in the shoulder. Then he gets the knife wound, and Rapp's trying to watch the hand-to-hand fight. And he's like, if I were there, I know that knife would have to go deeper in, but I wouldn't want to expose myself. He knows how Grisha is going to drop Scott and land on him
In order to
so
put
that
the knife further in.
Right, so the knife goes further in, and any sniper coming from that sunroof or that the rooftop can't get you. And he's like, this dude is doing everything right, even better than I might be doing it in this situation. And what's the stakes of that? My best friend is most likely going to die right here, right now, and I'm pinned down on this roof. And he does the only thing he can. He can't get a shot off because this guy's so good at concealing himself. He shoots the glass when he sees the guy turn his face a little bit, and the glass gets Coleman in the back of the head. But Grisha's face is exposed, and the only thing that makes Grisha leave is he gets shards of glass basically in his face, almost his eyes, and Grisha has to leave. And he realizes it's not Rapp. He's like, who is this guy I'm fighting here? If it's not Rapp, which is all that Grisha's after, he takes off.
Yeah, so that was the thing that sort of saved Scott, right? Because as Grisha's going in for the final blow, he realizes, and because Scott sees that, and he sees it, he takes a pause, and then he, with his last will and strength, he starts this whole tussle, which leads to Rapp seeing the yellow hair, which saves his life again.
Yep.
The yellow hair saves his life 2 ways. One, it had him put on the helmet, and 2, it allowed Rapp to see, all right, now I know which way he's facing. I'm gonna shoot.
Who's who?
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot. Yeah, exactly.
Dude.
No, this was really cool, and it leaves you. We see some real emotion from Rapp again, and then this is going to be continuing on in the next couple chapters where Rapp starts thinking about like what he did. He's lost first his wife, and his child, and then Stan Hurley and Thomas Stansfield, and like all these people in his now Scott. So
yeah, it even says when Rapp's thinking about that, Stan Hurley dying was just a few weeks ago, so it's still raw.
So all of this has happened relatively quickly.
Yeah, really quick. And so I love the personal stakes here because we as the reader don't know if Coleman's going to make it. Shot 4 or 5 times, stabbed, has glass shards in the back of his head. So we have stakes as a reader. Rapp has stakes because he's reflecting on all this loss and what he's been through. Yet the stakes can't be higher at the same time because they're literally fighting over a nuke sitting in a box in the warehouse. And here's what I love. Rapp eventually is able to belay down. So he uses the rope from the helicopter to also tie himself off, belay down through this roof into the warehouse floor. He's getting shot at. He goes quickly past Coleman, drops him a weapon next to him just in case he's able to use it. Doesn't even check on Scott because as much as Mitch is thinking, the mission has to come first, right?
Right.
If this nuke either goes off or gets lost or goes back into terrorist hands, game over. He goes and secures the nuke because Fred Mason, baby, ride in the helicopter. This is our first Fred Mason scene, who Rapp calls in to do the op with him. He drops a hook. Rapp can't find anything on the box to tie it to. He just ties it to the tail of the nuke. He just wraps it around the tail end of the nuke. And this thing is bobbing and crashing along the concrete of the floor until it gets out the warehouse door and the chopper's able to airlift it. And oh my God, Fred Mason. Do you remember how he got the nuke? Because Maslick can't pull it. He can't get the angle on it.
I know, he essentially like scoops it up by like maneuvering the helicopter a certain way. This whole leads for like some comic relief that is, Kyle. We're really seeing Kyle in full force with his humor here. This whole, because again, like Maslick ends up sitting on it, and they talk about, well, we just got out of there. Why do we have to go back? We literally have a nuke. Maslick's like, I should have taken that job as a gas station clerk. Like I had never seen the ocean in my life, and now I'm looking at a nuke in fucking Pakistan.
And Fred Mason's like, turn around. Are you crazy? And he says, quote, you realize you're literally sitting on a nuclear bomb, right? Maslick looked down. He actually was sitting on it.
The whole scene was coupled, juxtaposed against the fact that we may be losing Scott Coleman.
Like Scott might be dying. Yeah.
Could you imagine like reading this as, not knowing, first time, not knowing what's going to happen to Scott, and you can be like, oh, fuck, Kyle just got this. He wants to make a bold statement.
He just killed Stan.
He just killed Stan. Why not do our other favorite side character in Scott Coleman? Like,
yo, do you think that could have backfired if his first 2 books, he killed off 2 of Rapp's closest people and 2 of the fans' favorite people? That might have backfired. He comes awfully close here.
He does come awfully close. And he just did another one of Rapp's characters.
Yeah, but that's way later.
Yeah.
This is the second book, man.
I know.
It's bold. It's bold.
It's bold, but ultimately he doesn't. Scott survived.
Spoiler alert.
But yeah, no, I wish I could go back and enjoy this idea of Scott not living, and because we get these continuation scenes where Rapp brings this nuke back, right? He brings Scott back, the soldier needs to come back, right. And we keep getting updates from first the doctor when they land in Afghanistan that he's probably not going to, we don't know, and then from Irene 2 times where she's like, he came out of surgery, but he's in a coma. And then another phone call where then we get like the real hammer drops. He only has a couple hours,
And then Rapp and Maz are going like, what was it, like 150 miles an hour through Virginia to get to the hospital, to get to Bethesda.
In that sick car from Craig.
Yeah, Craig souped that thing up. Yeah, so that's where they take the nuke, right? Mm-hmm. They want to get some intel. Basically take this thing apart, see who tampered with it, see if you can get any forensics on it. And they use a guy in southwestern Virginia, sound like really out there, really isolated, who's living in a facility on the CIA's dime. It looked like one of our Cold War, like fallout shelters, or like one of our nuclear arsenal shelters. And so he's got all the tools available to him to analyze this thing, take it into a chamber, pull it apart. And yet, pretty cool, because you got to imagine CIA's got people like that, just these experts in their field who are a little too off the deep end to be on the payroll or be in an official capacity, but who, if you need in a pinch, they could soup up a car for you to go see your dead friend, and at the same time take apart a nuke to tell you who tampered with it and where the parts came from.
Right. And I guess just before we wrap up here, we find out that it's a nuke. And it's operational, but it's missing its fissile material. That's what was really going on in the warehouse while Scott was getting taken.
Right.
That they weren't trying to get the warhead, but they were trying to get the fissile material.
Right. And I think he's able to find there's some evidence of Russian parts.
That's what eventually is going to happen, but they know that this is not Pakistani. That it's someone else. And this is all him. He's like, the key is finding out who it was that shot Scott. And and now his mission will be to find out Grisha and who he is.
And they only got one of the nukes, but they know the entire arsenal because of the politics in Pakistan between the general Shirani and the president or prime minister Jitani. They're arguing over who has control of these nukes. So they're basically being driven around Pakistan, some of them unsupervised, they were saying in milk trucks or something. Right. Because both sides of this faction are trying to claim power and control, and there's no civilian oversight of this, and the army is kind of running roughshod with these nukes. So it's only one, and there may be many more falling into the wrong hands.
All right. Well, Mike, why don't you give me your winners and losers? Who won this book?
Yeah.
Or who won the first half of this book, I should say.
Right. Yeah, we talked about it, so I think some things are a little maybe out of order, just trying to figure out and keep up with the storylines. Almost like, Vince did that, where he'll drop you into 5 or 6 storylines and you'll slowly see them come together.
Yeah.
I feel like that's somewhat happening, but I'm going to kind of put it on the loser end because it's almost too distracting or jarring. And I'm going to put as 2 major winners. That action scene. You heard me talking about it.
Definitely.
It's not only a winner of this book, it's a winner in terms of action scenes of this entire series. But the other winner we didn't get into as much, I'll just say very quickly, the power dynamics in Russia. I buy that much more than the power dynamics in Pakistan. I buy the oligarchs, their conversation, this Krupin trying to resurrect the idea of the Russian czars. I feel like the power dynamics in Russia and the way that is explained through the dialogue with all of these different players is just really well done and well crafted. And in fact, I would say, I think Kyle did that and replaced what Vince would have done, which is having American politicians and the dialogue between subcommittees and hearings. There's, to be honest,
with Russian subcommittees.
With this board of oligarchs, there's no American politician halfway through this book, and Vince would have absolutely had some BS going on with the American political machine. Kyle has moved us on. He's just not even touching that. And I mean, to me, that's a stark break from Vince's style and tradition here, which I'm okay with. I'm not saying that's a loser. I'm just saying it's different.
We would have had one scene with, it might not have been an important politician or important government character, but we would have had at least one scene with someone who was either being a dumbass or going to eventually mess up something,
Exactly.
Like, what is it in The Last Man? That scene with the underling from the State Department, along with the military person that she's sleeping with.
Ariana Vintner, yep. And the reintegration.
Ultimately, like that storyline and those 2 characters we'd never see again. But we would have had something like that,
And that those characters weren't just, you should know about this person, they're important to my story. No, those characters were there to remind you of the real world impact that politics was having for the folks operating on the ground in Afghanistan. So even if those characters and their interactions had nothing to do with or didn't do much to advance the plot of the book, they brought you into the world and made it realistic. I feel like instead of the American politics, Kyle's doing that with the Russian oligarchs.
I agree.
All right, your winners, your losers?
Oh, well, you said them both. I think also just the introduction of Grisha. Like,
Yes.
First time in a while that we get this a new character that is very interesting and going to become a major player, at least in the next couple books. I was kind of sad that we don't see him after Red War, but I guess he still could be lingering out there. Maybe Kyle could bring him back. But yeah, no, I think, and then like Grisha gets the drop on both Mitch and Scott, so he has to be the winner of the first half.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Grisha because you know how we did Vince's villains a few weeks ago? A couple people in the comments were like, "Oh, Grisha's got to be one of the best. He's got to be in the top 5." And like,
he's not.
I was like, I agree with you, but we're talking about Vince Flynn's villains. But you're absolutely right. Like Grisha's up there in villains for the whole series.
He's up there
for sure.
In my top 5,
or even just characters, like best crafted or created characters.
Sure,
he even makes the top list. So
yeah, very much so.
Cool. Nice.
All right. Well, that's the first half of the book. We will be back next week to wrap it up and give you our breakdown of the covers.
Yes, cover talk.
And, what we do on part 2 of these books.
Maybe a limerick or 2?
Well, maybe. I'm excited. All right. So we need to thank our patrons. Our special operator, Sherry F., our special agents, George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. Find us at mitrappod.com or on Twitter or Insta at mitrappod. Go check out that Body Man post, and you can win yourself a copy of that if you retweet or what is it on
Post?
Insta?
Repost,
I guess. Share.
Yeah. We'll pull that winner in a couple of weeks.
Yep. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.